for me, actually, the way that I can answer this question about how do I increase my enjoyment of God is not by actually doing any more. It's actually by doing less.
Yeah.
It's actually by just sitting and being before Him in His presence.
Welcome to the Step Up Podcast, where our goal is to help you step up as a man in every area of your life. I'm your host, Dave Kinney, and I'm joined by my pastor, Pastor Chris Kouba. It was awesome, first of all. We stayed here. We had the best, the most ideal. Usually at Christmas with the kids and all of that, we travel and we'll go see family and we'll kind of be out. This year, though, we just got to stay here, and it was really fun. We got to do a whole bunch of stuff here in Houston, but also, just as a family, which was really, really nice. It was a much slower pace, yeah. Christmas, New Year's, all that sort of thing. And so it just gave us plenty of time to have a good time as a family. And
the holidays felt good for us too, ministerial wise. It
was awesome.
There's sometimes that the holiday kind of doesn't fall great. This one was like a really good one to really kind of be able to maximize a little bit of.
In large part, because we haven't talked much about this yet, the construction projects are wrapped.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you are a member or a tender at United City, our construction projects have completed. They look fantastic.
It truly is. It's
incredible. And it was done in the nick of time. We were told from the very beginning of these projects that Christmas was the day.
No, I think initially we were told Thanksgiving and then Christmas, which, at the end of the day, that's very typical for construction. And frankly, the folks that worked on it did an amazing job.
And some of it's just weather related.
Awesome.
And but it was awesome. I mean, were they working on it the day before Christmas Eve? Absolutely,
for sure.
But that's just good timing.
But it was incredible
awesome
Christmas Eve services at the church, and it was, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm kind of ready. I love this time of year. I love too, though, just the kind of the mental thought of the calendar year turning.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just kind of we've done a lot of planning and stuff like that heading into this year, what this year is going to look like. But now it's time to execute. Now it's time to do it. Right. This is the time whenever you're, the gym's already a little more full. Notice that a little bit?
Wouldn't know. Work out in my garage. Okay. Big garage workout guy.
Okay. Well, people.
Okay. So here's a question. Do you do anything in that week in between Christmas and New Year's to kind of get your new year off to the right start?
You mean physically or what?
No, here's exactly what I mean. Every year, I look forward to it so much. I will purge my closet in that week between Christmas and New Year's.
Okay,
just get
clothes.
rid of. If I have not worn it in the last 6 months,
that's a good little.
It's gone.
So not spring cleaning, a little winter cleaning.
Winter cleaning, and everything is perfect, spotless, crazy organized.
Very much like you.
Boom! My 2025 gets off to a great start, just like that.
Well, as a church, we also do a church-wide fast.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, so a little bit of that is I kind of eat knowing that I'm about to enjoy a little bit. So I don't know if that's really a good prep, but I definitely enjoyed Christmas.
There's some wisdom. Didn't Greg Mott tell you this? There's some wisdom in the feast before you fast.
Oh yeah,
which is great.
He said both are just as important, and sometimes both is influential for sure.
So are you a big resolutions guy?
I'm not so much like a resolutions. I do make goals though. I don't know if I'm trying to be semantics here. I'm sure I am. I just feel like resolutions are guaranteed. These are things that you wish you would have done and you don't do. There are certainly some things that I like to think through and say, hey, this year I want to read this many books, or this year I want to be able to lose this much weight, or whatever it may be, some of those types of things. I came across a list, though, that we've done with the staff now for a couple of years, and we both have done with our small groups even recently, and I kind of want to talk about as maybe a challenge to the men for the new year to consider doing this, because these questions are great because they're kind of opposite of what people would tell you, or the best things you're supposed to do from a business standpoint. You're supposed to have measurable, actionable, clear kind of. These are way more kind of almost open-ended, but they're way deeper.
Deep, yeah.
And they're more of what kind of man are you going to be? What kind of impact are you going to have? These are questions I actually found from an article a number of years ago, but I've read the questions longer than the article has been out. It actually came out in 2019, but I came across these questions even years prior to. It just was good to see it kind of written down in format. We'll link this on the podcast, but it's 10 questions for a new year. It's written by a professor at Southern Seminary, Don Whitney. Okay. Here's a way to do this. Maybe I'll read all of the 10 questions, and then let's maybe dive in and look at a few of these. Okay.
So when I did this with my small group, I had everyone open their notes app or their journal or whatever they write on, and actually write them all down and have specific answers for each of them within the first month of the new year.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a fantastic practice.
Yeah, for sure. Because I this is not something that you just want to like check off and do really fast.
Correct.
Marinate on this. Yeah. Let this be a little bit of part of your devotional time with the Lord. Let this be a little bit of a time of like maybe go on a date with your wife and kind of talk these things through, that type of thing. These are the level of depth of questions that I think can really help set you forward. If you really answer these, you'll see what I mean in a minute. It can really, really, really propel you big time. So here's the first question. What's one thing that you can do this year to increase your enjoyment of God? One thing that you can do this year to increase your enjoyment of God. Interesting question, because usually a lot of times you think about, okay, what are some spiritual disciplines that I need to do? I'm going to read my Bible this year. I'm going to play all those.
Right.
And those things may be part of the answer. But the question is specifically, how do you enjoy God more?
Yeah, I think naturally we kind of go to, what can I do to have more joy in my faith? Or what can I do for the Lord? Or how can this year be different because of what I do in my day-to-day practice?
Yeah.
There is a lot more weight to this question.
Yeah.
How can I increase my enjoyment of God?
Here, let me just mention my answer real quick that I've done, and this has actually been one for the last few years, is something called chair time. I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but it's basically Timothy Ateek, who is now a pastor at Watermark Community Church and was a friend of our church big time, was formerly the director of Breakaway Ministries down at College Station. But he introduced me to this both concept and this idea of a book called Chair Time that basically talks about if you had an opportunity to get a chair and you sit before the Lord, you're not going to walk in there talking. You're going to look in there saying a whole bunch of stuff. Instead, you're going to sit there and you're going to be in His presence and you're going to listen and you're going to basically let Him control the conversation,
right.
Let Him guide it. And so for me, actually, the way that I can answer this question about how do I increase my enjoyment of God is not by actually doing any more. It's actually by doing less.
Yeah.
It's actually by just sitting and being before Him in His presence, which sounds so weird and hard for me and difficult. But on the other hand, I've just found that there's just something where I just kind of like, man, I have so much that I've got to do that I actually need to sit and do nothing and sit before the Lord and just kind of be like, okay, Lord, I need to think about some things with you.
Yeah.
And we just spend some time there. So what's one thing you can do to increase your enjoyment of God? Number 2, I love this one. What's an impossible prayer that you can pray? What's an impossible prayer that you can pray? It says there are more than a dozen but God statements in Scripture, such as Romans 5:8, which reads, God shows His love for us and that while we're still sinners, Christ died for us. But what's a but God prayer that you can pray for the upcoming year? We're launching actually a new series here at the church this week called Draw Near. And we're going to be talking this Sunday about the prayer of Jabez. And I'm not going to lie to you, in the midst of preparing this message, it has felt just super uncomfortable because I'm so accustomed to like, you're not allowed to ask much of God.
Yeah.
Like we're going to keep it safe.
Yeah.
I don't want to offend you. I don't want to like do too much. And I think what I'm realizing from both this prayer and then specifically this impossible prayer that you can pray, I don't ask big enough. Like I don't swing enough big enough stick. I can assure you of this, men, whatever you're thinking of that you want to pray and ask God, you may be praying sort of out of a desperation thing, like your business, right. Or maybe you got something with maybe you've got a family dynamic or a crisis situation going on there. And those things definitely we begin to pray some. It's certainly not limiting it to that, but I think it's also just saying this, like, what do your finances need to look like for the next 10 years of your life? What kind of big, bold provision do you want to ask that God maybe gives that you can kind of do that. I'm in a season of my life. Okay, I got 4 teenagers. I got one headed off to college this year, which is just crazy to think about. I got another one that's about to be a senior. Again, I'm going to have one in college, 2 high school, 1 middle school. The next 10 years of my life are the most expensive years of my entire life. I got cars, I got wedding, college, all the things. And it's just sort of like, okay, Lord, I'm going to need some massive provision. I'm not just saying that in terms of meeting the needs, but like specifically Jabez type prayer. Lord, I want you to bless me so abundantly that I have the opportunity to actually be a blessing to others. Yeah. Don't just meet my needs, Like do even more. What's an impossible prayer that you can pray? I know that some folks, even in our small group, some of the prayers that they were talking through were over basically some salvation prayers over some family members.
Yeah.
That just feels like there's no way. But they even said in the midst of doing this, thinking through what I'm going to pray about that's an impossible thing kind of begins to sort of operate in a level of both dependence upon the Lord, but then also operates under a level of like, okay, Lord, you could actually do that in 2025. Right. Like, you could be in on this and stuff like that.
It's also this question, I love it so much because when I read this question and really sat with it for a little bit, what the Lord brought to my mind is something that was a big, impossible prayer that I was praying 4 or 5 years ago.
That's so good.
But for some reason, I just resolved that it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And the Lord kind of brought it back to mind and said, hey, be diligent and steadfast in your prayer, and you're making your request made known to me. So that may be you. I mean, it may be something like, what's the thing that you wouldn't say it like this, but you gave up on.
Yeah, that's good.
The Lord may remind you of.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we give up far easier than God does.
Yeah.
And we got to be reminded of that. But men, think through that. Can you just imagine what could possibly take place in the listeners of this podcast, the men on this podcast, if you actually prayed like just bold, hard prayers?
Yeah.
Like, I just think God would be like, yeah. I mean, it says in 2 Chronicles 16:9, the eyes of the Lord look to and fro throughout the whole earth to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless toward him. I read that as this: the Lord is looking for some men who are willing to go and say, I'll do it. Yeah. Like I'll lift this up. I'll take on this task. I'll take on this charge. What's an impossible prayer you can pray?
Let me ask you this on that, just while we're there. When you think of impossible prayers and some of those prayers that you've prayed in your life, what has that done to your faith?
Oh, well, it's been huge, because what I've experienced is, I've mentioned this many times here, but I've journaled a lot. And so because of that, I've got kind of these backlog records of just the provision and the goodness and the fact that God kind of met, which I think emboldens me to be like, oh, if he did that, that's only small potatoes for what he wants to do. Like, this is nothing. Like, it makes me want to pray even more kind of crazy out there.
God-sized.
Here we go. Like, let's go do this. Like, at the end of the day, I don't just want to do this because I worked really, really hard. We got a really good team together and we did our stuff and we met our numbers and it was 2x more than it was before. That's great. I would love that. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, but what if you added a 0?
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole different level of thinking, but that's also a whole different level of praying.
Yeah. And it will genuinely increase your faith.
Oh, gosh.
And so for our listeners, what I would say is one of your resolutions, goals for this upcoming year, I want it to be, I'm going to put this goal on you, that you have greater faith in 2025 than you ever have before. And nothing for me personally increases my faith like making big, bold requests of the Lord and watching him do what only he can do.
Yeah, that's good. Number 3, let me keep going. Number 3, what's the most important thing that you can do to improve your family life? Let me just say this, men, on the podcast. I was told it 1,000 times. I didn't believe it. Now I can tell somebody else they may not believe it, but it's true. It happens so fast. Happens so fast. So I would just simply tell you, if it means you need to get a trip together that you can all be together, do it. If it means you need to put that phone down and put the phone, when you walk in the house, put the phone in the other room, put it by the bed and leave it there for a little while. That was mine, less screen time. Then do that. If it means more family experiences, I want to play more pickleball this year.
Yeah.
But specifically with my family. I want to play it now. They don't want to play with me probably as much. They're playing with other friends.
Drag them along.
They're bringing their friends, but still. But what's that one most important thing that you can do to improve your family life? Maybe it's a scheduled adjustment that you need to make. Maybe it is a financial adjustment that you need to make. Maybe it is I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, some form of discipline.
Sure.
I mean, for me, it's the same as what yours has been. It's my phone. And if you're watching this, which we do record these and put them on YouTube, I'm holding my phone right here. I can confidently tell you that my family life would not get worse if I was on this less.
Yeah.
Like it's a guarantee that if I put this away, then my family benefits greatly.
Number 4, in which spiritual discipline do you most want to make progress this year? What spiritual discipline do you most want to make progress this year? This is a big one, whether this is Bible reading, whether this is in your prayer life, whether this is journaling, whether this is reading, whatever it may be. I think it's just, we've given a lot of different helps on this podcast, trying to help men kind of know what to do and kind of know how to do it. Let me just encourage, if you're like, well, man, I didn't really know what to do. Hey, go on our website at our church. We're about to launch this church-wide fast. I can tell you this, the stories that we have heard over the last 4 to 5 years that we've been doing this, of people who have fasted for the very first time, even if it's something as simple as like fasting for one meal for every day of the week, or one day of the week, or digital fast or something like that for the very first time. Like, the stories throughout the year of like, dude, you're not going to believe God showed me this, or what, kind of a thing. We got a guy coming on board at our church here in just a short amount of time, and a lot of the process of him ending up on our team was based upon a fast of something totally separate going on in his life a year ago. Mm-hmm. And it just, my point is just, if you're looking for a discipline to make some progress in, let this be one of them.
Yeah, jump in.
Go to our website. We'd love for more to help to join us and to do it. So this is a tough one. Number 5, what's the single biggest time waster in your life, and how can you redeem the time? Yeah.
It's tough because it's so easy to identify. It's just what you least want to deal with and come to terms with.
Yeah, this was not hard.
All right, so look back over 2024. What would you say your biggest time waster was?
I worked hard at social media, trying to kind of like scale that back and that kind of stuff. I got addicted to some stupid games on my dumb phone.
Did you really?
Yes. And
you do not seem like a phone game guy.
But I got sucked in. I was like, some holidays, and we're like all of a sudden, killing time, whatever. And I start playing these stupid games, and then it's just like, I'm addicted. I'm like, I'm almost to the next level. And it's like, what the heck is wrong with me?
I do not see you as a words with friends guy.
No, it wasn't like that. No, it wasn't like that. Block blast, some other stupid stuff. And then my kids are playing it, and then they're like, beating me on it. And I just, anyway. But that's one. I'm also getting rid of cable this year.
Are you?
Yeah. But a lot of it's because of cost. I just can't stand spending that much money for 2 games a week. Yep. Which is what it comes down to.
And now you'll just pay for YouTube TV plus Netflix subscription plus Amazon Video plus Disney Peacock and Paramount.
Probably so. You're right. Okay, well, the answer's for you on the podcast. It's not really about me. This is about what you need to do to help make sure the single biggest time waster in your life, and don't play any of those dumb games. All right, number 6. What's the most helpful new way that you could strengthen your church? Oh, of course. Here we go. The pastors are saying this.
Talk.
But at the end of the day, this is stuff I'm reading from somebody else, although I couldn't tell you how much I totally agree. In fact, next episode, you're going to be able to hear from a great special guest that we've got going to be on the podcast that's going to be talking a little bit about why the church should be primary over all of your life, specifically for men. Can't wait to hear that. But think about that. How can your church be stronger in 2025 because of you? Mm-hmm. Like does it need to be stronger because of your giving? Does it need to be stronger because of your serving? Does it need to be stronger because of your praying, your encouragement? Like, at the end of the day, don't let the church just be something that you go to. The church needs to be led by men. The men who are following after, leading their homes, and leading Christ Church. And so I would just ask that question. What's the most helpful new way? Again, if you're like, well, I've been given forever. Okay, great. Well, then do you need to give more? Or do you need to serve more? What is the new way that you can strengthen your church in 2025? Great question.
I think that's a great question, obviously, for a reflective, introspective time like this. But I also genuinely, I can't get over the fact that I feel like the Lord himself would ask you that question.
Sure.
Like, hey, that's my bride, the bride of Christ, the church. How can you benefit that place more? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a holy question. Yeah. I did the same thing whenever I led my small group and we got to that question. I said, oh, here we go. Now the pastor's going to try and get more from me. But no, let's take that away. Like, whether you go to our church or some other church, like, what can you do to benefit that place
Yeah.
more? I mean, there are some men in this church who I feel like have answered that question over the last 3 or 4 years here
Yeah.
that have made a significant difference in the building up of the bride of Christ.
For sure.
I'm thinking Dennis Alters, Nick Terry, Wayne Nippers. Wayne Nippers has been out here for the last 2
Wayne's
days
been awesome.
just serving the church during the week. And I mean, what an amazing thing.
Yep. Yeah, there's no question about it. And we think about the legacy. There's a lot of new going on right now at our building and our both of our facility inside and outside, as well as just new member Sunday coming up with just so many different celebrations and things like that. But really, it's the legacy of these folks who've just kind of been serving. And here's what I love about it. One of our key core values here next at United City, everyone has the next step. They're still doing it.
Right.
So I think that's what's cool about it. Some of you are like stalwart, like you're just legacy faithful dudes at your church. Praise God for you. Let me ask a question to you. What's the most helpful new way that you could strengthen your church?
Yeah.
You got a next step. Some of you are like, man, I'm just kind of, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like I'm going and I didn't used to go. So that's a big thing. And I would
great.
tell you, man, that's awesome. So build on it. Like at the end of the day, get better. Like you do even more. What does that look like for you to maybe, is it taking that, is it going to a growth track? Is it going to find out what your spiritual gift is and serving? What is that next step for you to fully engage? And I would say this, I've said this a lot recently, even to our church. If you will give a year of your life to the church, like be all in, like just do all the stuff, serve, go to everything, be all in. I promise you it'll be the best year of your life. Promise you it'll be the best year of your life. And so if you're on the fringe and you're a guy listening to this, maybe your greatest way that you can strengthen your church is just by being all in and trusting it.
Right.
And serving it in every way. So here's another one, number 7. For whose salvation will you pray most fervently this year? Whose salvation will you pray fervently this year? I'm pretty sure my 2 guys that I got on here listen to the podcast, so I don't necessarily want to say it, although they know I'm praying for them and they know I'm talking to and about them. But this was a big one in our small group. I think it really rattled us a little bit. Rattle's not the right word, maybe in a bad way, but more so just like, golly, I don't know if I pray for that enough.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if I think about and say their name enough.
That's
I just
exactly
sort of
right.
hope they get saved. And if they use me, great, but I'm not really hoping they don't, kind of a thing.
Sure.
And this is instead, whose salvation will I pray fervently? Like, Lord, would you not only save them, but would you choose to let me be a part of it? Mm-hmm. Like that's a whole different idea. And
I think the
concept.
act of saying their name out loud, identifying who that person is, writing their name down, and bringing that before the Lord in fervent prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll change your mindset on how God could use you.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just true for all of us.
Sure.
When you start praying, like asking the Lord to use you in specific ways, it's amazing how He'll open doors to do that.
Sure.
I mean, it really is remarkable.
And I think a lot of times it's because now all of a sudden you've got spiritualized to begin to see opportunities that God all along had been providing. You just didn't notice.
Yep, that's exactly right.
But that's sort of what God does. Prayer changes you for sure.
If you struggle with identifying who that person is or who those people are, I would tell you this. 1, look at your family.
Yeah.
Extended family that you don't talk to anymore, whoever that may be. Allow this to overcome any of the issues that have been there in the past. 2, the people that you work with. 3, the people that you live on the same street as. 4, what about your kids' activities?
Yeah, for sure.
The things that your kids are involved in that you go to and you're a part of and all of those. What if you invested in a different way and started asking some faith questions out on the football field or softball field, baseball, wherever you are, and see that as an investment of your time toward the kingdom.
And Daz, let me just add to that and include your kids who play in those sports in those conversations and in those prayers. Like when you do nightly prayers with your kids, if they're little and they're yours age, little bitty ones or younger ones, elementary kind of thing, include it. Hey, we're going to pray for whoever, and we're going to pray for them to come to know Jesus and that they would want to follow after Him and stuff like that. I just think, let your kids think about themselves as evangelists, not just.
That's right. They go to a Bible study.
Right. They just go to church, kind of a thing. So,
can I celebrate something?
Yeah,
just
please.
For a moment. So, this question is a very important question. This upcoming Sunday, I am getting to baptize my son's one of his best buddies in his class, and his dad, who happens to be my son's football coach.
That's so good.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so good. And I think that's the thing we've seen for sure. God, like, he longs to answer this.
Yeah, he really does.
Like, this isn't like you're not pulling his teeth. You know,
Yep.
you're not pulling teeth trying to
Yep.
get him to do this, or like trying to make him do something he doesn't actually want to do. Like, he's all in. He's all in. He just wants you to want it just as much as he wants it already for him. For sure.
So we're inviting everyone. The whole
That's so
class is
fun.
invited. The whole team, all that kind of stuff. They're just taking it and running. And
It's gonna be
just
good.
again, who knows what the Lord might do.
Yeah. That's so good. Number 8, what's the most important way by God's grace that you will try to make this year different than last? Most important way by God's grace that you will try to make this year different from last. I think that's a good one because that is a little more all-encompassing, I think. It's just like, do you need to eat better?
Yeah.
Like, did you gain weight? Did you get healthier? Did you get not healthier? That maybe is something we could talk about down the road. Is just a discipline episode of just what that looks like. The Bible says that while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way. I read that to mean two things. One, we should make sure that we focus on growing our spiritual lives, no question. But bodily training is of value, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you need to start working out? Is that maybe what you need to do? Like, make that decision right now. How's this year going to be different than last year? We're not aging up. We're not trending upwards, right? So we know that it's going to catch up. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be an issue. So I think instead we need to make some perhaps physical changes or maybe some financial changes, spiritual changes, whatever it may be. What does that need to look like for you? Number 9, what's one thing that you can do to improve your prayer life this year? One thing that you can do to improve your prayer life this year. We've talked about that a lot so far. Again, we're about to do a whole series here at the church about some models of prayer, trying to just give people some kind of hooks to kind of hang on to in order to know what to do, what to use in order to be able to be successful at this. So I encourage you to jump on. But, what does that look like for you to grow in your prayer life? For me, this is have more in the moment prayers.
Mm-hmm.
I do a pretty good job in the mornings, do a pretty good job at nights. I do a pretty good job praying with my kids. I want to be able to talk to God a little bit more conversationally, a little more ongoing. That's just something I'd like to kind of think through a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Allowing the communion part of this,
Yeah.
like where you're in communion with the Lord, really understanding that He is with you.
Yeah.
And so He cares about the things that you care about. And it does not have to be the most formal, like, all right, I'm going to hit my knees, cross my hands, and I'm going to, dear Lord, it doesn't have to be that. I think that that's beneficial in a lot of ways, but I also think that there is a really important discipline to be had when you are more conversational with God.
Real. And that's for me. It could be something totally different for you. I think the key is, that's the beautiful thing about these questions. What do you specifically need to do? One thing that you can do to improve your prayer life this year. For some of you, we've talked about this. Maybe it's to have a place that you go where you meet with the Lord. Doesn't mean that's the only time you ever talk to the Lord, but it just does mean when you go there, you do talk to the Lord there. It could be a discipline with your phone where you set it off, or you don't make it wake up until a certain time frame, or I don't know what it may be, but I think the key is don't neglect what it's at for you.
Talk through a couple of these things though, because they are really good. When you first became the pastor here, you asked everyone in the church to take their phones out and set an alarm.
Yeah, that's right.
Walk us through what that was.
Yeah, I was preaching through the book of Ephesians at the time, and Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20 says, "Now to Him who is able to do immeasurably more than all that we could ever ask or even think, to Him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen." And so I had everybody put their alarm out for 3:20, basically representing Ephesians 3:20.
Yeah.
And that we would ask that God would allow us to do immeasurably more than all that we could ever ask or think. That's a great thought that you could perhaps do on yours. Here's another thought too. Put an alarm on your phone for the anniversary of your marriage. So mine is 6:01 every day. I get a little alarm that goes off, and basically it tells me to pray for Hillary.
Yeah.
Somebody taught me that. I don't even know who it was. And that's a little hack or whatever. The goal is not that you just put in a bunch of hacks that you end up don't doing.
Sure.
But I do think the likelihood of you praying, if you do put in some of these things, are going to exponentially increase than if you just hope that you get better.
It will certainly improve your prayer life.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want to do this year is, so typically whenever I'll pray, I will reflect on what the Lord has done and give him thanks. I will make requests to him, and then I'll pray for other people. One of the things that I'm going to do this year is to be much more specific with my gratefulness. So throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, I'm just going to have an ongoing list. There's like 3 or 4 guys in my small group who are going to do this as well. And we're just going to call it like the grateful list. Yeah. And we're just going to list out the ways that we have seen God come through, or the ways that he's provided, or what he's doing, and expressing a heart of genuine gratitude over very specific things that happen in our lives to the Lord.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just feel like that'll improve.
Yeah. Your heart will be full, big time.
Right.
Last one. What single thing can you plan to do this year that will matter most in 10 years and in eternity? What single thing can you plan to do this year that will matter most in 10 years and in eternity? That's a heavy thought.
Yeah.
It's like a heavy question. When I've done this with my guys in my small group in the past, I've done this where I'll actually like write out that day 10 years from now and say, okay, how old are your kids going to be? And when you start to kind of do that, you're just like, wow, that's a little bit different. Yep. I mean, you'll have full blown teenagers, and
we'll be, one of them will be out of the house.
Yeah.
One of them will be almost out of the house. Yeah. I mean, it's
quick.
It's quick.
Yep. So what can you do right now this year that in 10 years is going to be worthy of making that, man, I'm glad I did this the last 10 years list?
I think you're right. I think that question deserves for it to be written down.
Yeah.
Like your answer to really put some thought into it and write that down.
Right. Whatever day you're hearing this, that date, 10 years from now, write how old you're going to be, how long you'll have been married at that point if you're married, how old your kids are going to be, write out a few things like that, and back from there. And I think you'll be able to see. So anyway, hopefully these are helpful to you. I mean, these I've used it many, many years now, both with the staff we're going to go through these, but as well as just some of my men's groups that I've met with and things like that, just as a way to set some goals. I'm all about that, all about resolutions, whatever that looks like, but like step up and do some real ones.
Yep.
And I think that Dr. Whitney here has provided a great list and guide for us to be able to do that.
I agree. It's gold. Pastor Chris, what are you most excited about for the Step Up podcast in 2025?
I think just getting both more people exposed to the podcast and getting more people to be able to listen. But we've got some really good content too. We're going to be finishing up here just in next week. It will be the last one of the first season here. But then we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back with season 2. We've already got some great content ready to go, restored for you. And just really, really excited to be able to put tools. Now that we feel like we've got one season down, we want to make sure we can dial in even more to try to help give you specific helps to grow as a leader in your family, in your faith, in your finances, in all the areas of your life and your leadership. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we started last year, 2024, talking about the potential of doing something like this. And man, I'm just so thankful.
Here we go.
Like the Lord has done great things.
Here we go.
Sometimes I'm like, I can't believe people are listening to this,
either.
But it's a great time. And if you are listening, we could not be more thankful for you. It means a lot every time that you share it or rate it or anything that you do to help us get the word out about Step Up is a great benefit to us, and we're very, very thankful for you. Big things in store in 2025.
It's going to be good.
Let's roll. God bless. Thanks for listening to the Step Up podcast. Do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share this episode to help us get the word out. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment and even leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For additional information or to reach out directly, please visit chriskouba.com. That's chriskouba.com. unitedcitygroup.com. You can follow Pastor Chris on social media and just search Chris Kouba, Kouba. You can also follow United City Church on all socials at United City Church. That's UNTD City Church. Thanks so much.